Hello and welcome to Sip Hooray, the podcast for wine lovers, the wine curious, and people who want to know the stories behind the label. Over the years, Mary Orlin and I have found that as much as we love wine, what we enjoy even more are the fascinating and inspiring people connected to the wine industry. On today's show, we're proud to be joined by a vintner we know you're going to love. Sure, her wines are fantastic, but her story is one of a kind. She's Iris Rideau, a trailblazer and a visionary. In 1997, Iris became the first African-American woman to own a winery in the U.S. But that isn't the beginning of her amazing story. In fact, the winery, well, that was a retirement project for her. Iris's entire adult life has been about bravely breaking barriers and boldly doing what no one thought was possible. Her story is uniquely American and incredibly inspiring, and we can't wait to talk with her. We are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orlin. Iris Rideau's life is full of firsts and breaking glass ceilings. She's been a badass in the insurance world, in finance, in politics, and wine. She's recently released her memoir, From White to Black, One Life Between Two Worlds. And Iris can add talented writer and accomplished storyteller to her list of accomplishments. The book grabs you from the first sentence. It's just full of stories that keep you turning the page. And we are so excited that Iris is joining us today.
Iris, we're really glad to have you. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you to both of you. It's really my pleasure. And it just feels like it's so comfortable. And I've met two new friends today.
Yay!
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a win in my book.
I love
Thank
that.
You.
Yes.
Well, we called you a trailblazer in our intro. That's a big moniker. How does that term sit with you? Is that a lot of responsibility on what I perceive are not enormous shoulders? You're not a huge woman, but you sure carry a lot, and your life experience would leave one to believe otherwise, that those shoulders can handle anything.
Yes, they can. They started off at 10 years old and younger, handling the world, actually, for a little girl. And I think that's what made them so strong, in spite of the fact that I'm only 5 feet tall.
Are you 5 feet?
Really? I wouldn't have imagined that. I'm picturing much taller.
I know everybody's surprised when they meet me. It's like this little woman that's mighty.
You're small but mighty.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of firsts in your life. Was that intentional, or is it just kind of how you operate?
I think that it just evolved over the years. I think the important thing that I've learned from life is that it's essential that you stay open to life and be willing to take risks and chances and continue on accepting the next thing that comes along and as a challenge. And I always say that that adversities can bring you down or they can lift you up. It's really up to you as the individual what you want to do with your life.
And Iris, you just go for it. You seemingly through all your stories have no fear. You don't take no for an answer.
That's what I say all the time. When I'm giving advice to young people, the first thing I say is never accept no for an answer. It is not an answer. It's not supposed to even be in your vocabulary.
But when you're young, it's so easy to be intimidated by a no.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you find yourself caving into that and giving into that at some point in time. However, I also recognize that in that moment when I'm feeling insecure, I'm talking primarily now as a child, I found a way to save myself. And it started with, as you read in the book, probably, that it started learning how to meditate without even realizing I was meditating.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And because back in those days, there was no such thing as therapist or anyone that you could go to for counseling, other than, of course, if you're crying, your mom will console you, but it doesn't solve, she doesn't know how to solve the problem. And because, we're all different, and our parents are our parents, and they're human beings as well with their own limitations. And it may not necessarily be what you need at the time. They're consoling. And for me, it always seemed to be that. It always seemed to be that I needed to find a way to solve my own problems from the very beginning.
Sure. Well, you talk about saving yourself in the book several times, and it really goes back to the environment you were brought up in New Orleans in the Jim Crow South of the 40s. And you would passe blanc, um,
Mhm.
you say to save yourself from all the injustices that when you are perceived white versus when you're perceived black.
Yes,
So talk about that, because that really shaped your life, didn't it?
it certainly did. As a matter of fact, I think that's really what created the real foundation for my drive, determined never to go back to the South and be treated the way I was treated at such a young age. Um, so I'm Creole, as you know, by culture and heritage, and which means that as Creoles, we were, well, most of my family looked like me, um, blonde, light eyes, and very light skin. And we were determined to save ourselves from Jim Crow and those harsh rules of oppression. So we would pass for white or passe blanc, as you said. And I experienced the difference between the races and the harshness of those laws.
Was there guilt involved with passing as white? Or was that a strange transition for you to like, okay, in this setting, I'm going to be white?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Hmm.
My grandmother always lived as white, even though she was Creole with African ancestry. Uh, my mother, on the other hand, lived as black, loved black people, had black friends, and of course Creoles. But my grandmother insisted on passing for white. She lived as white, and she taught me how to live as white. So when I would go out with her, I experienced all the privileges of being white. And when I went out with my black cousins, I experienced all the oppression of having to step off the sidewalk. Sometimes they forced us to kneel, which meant we were kneeling in
Really?
mud. Oh,
Oh.
yeah. We had to keep our heads down so that not even our eyes could touch them. That's how serious the rules were and how strict they were.
And
So
just
crazy.
the denial of, I think it's, we forget what our country went through and how the oppression uh, that African Americans faced, people of color faced in the
Yes,
South, and I mean the denial of basic human rights, that legislating that blacks were second class citizens, and as you said, not even worthy to make eye contact with a white person.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was such an extreme rule. Uh, I think I mentioned to you, well, you read in the book, about the train ride.
Oh, yes. It was like a tale of two train rides.
Yes, and it was really, it exemplified, I think, the life that I was living.
Sure.
And the rule was so strict. It went so far as to say that if a person of color was found passing for white and being in the white train car, they could be taken off the train and lynched. And
Oh,
and the porters, if they knew that we were passing for white and didn't turn us in, they too could be taken off.
wow. So they were at risk.
They were at
Wow.
risk. Yes.
So, but so you open your memoir with the story of the train ride to and from Los Angeles and radically different experiences you had traveling as white and then traveling as black. And that's what took my breath away, that story. Can you just tell our readers what happened?
Yes. Well, I wanted to come to California. My father lived in California, so that summer when I was 10, I finally convinced my mother to let me go to California for the summer, and my grandmother willingly took me, and we went as white, and we experienced all the luxuries of being on the white train cars, or in the white train cars, I should say, and going to the dining room, beautiful dining room hallways, mahogany walls and red drapes and carpet. And it was just, I can see it to this day. The tablecloths are all white, and bud vase at the window of every table. And she would comb my hair and Shirley Temple curls, and I'd put on my Mary Jane patent leather shoes and go down to the dining car.
My
And I
goodness.
felt like I was Cinderella, you know?
Yes, yes.
And so it was wonderful. And I spent the summer with my father. And unfortunately, my grandmother decided to stay. She did not want to go back to New Orleans. And I had to come back on the train with my mother's black girlfriend.
Mm.
But we were assigned to the Negro car, is what it was called. And that Negro car was dark and dingy and dirty, and we couldn't leave the car. We sat on hard wooden benches that didn't recline. We slept there, ate there, and of course, we had to bring our own food, which was generally fried chicken in a box. And 2.5 days of that sent me into PTSD.
Sure. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the going from white to black and having these two worlds exist within this one child. You were still a girl at the time, and
Yes.
the inner conflict that must have created for you, and then, but also the drive to change your life. I mean, that's where it started. I think you got back home to New Orleans and decided, I need to be in California. I don't want to live here.
Exactly right. That's exactly what happened. And that's what drove me to this, still drives me to this day.
Sure.
I need to
And
turn my phone off. Sorry.
and
It's
you,
all right.
so at age 11 or 12, you were able to persuade your mother to move from New Orleans to California. How did you do that?
I nagged her to death.
As a mother of a daughter, I know that kind of nagging. And I don't know
Yeah,
that she'd
right?
get me to move, but I mean, I call her sometimes like a mosquito or a gnat that just won't stop when she wants something. It's, you know.
That's exactly what I was. I never
That's so
thought about
funny.
it that way, but that's a good description. Certainly. Yes. And she finally gave in.
Hmm.
I did. I nagged her every day. I couldn't stand it. And, once you experience the luxuries of a life that you're entitled to, and that's the way I always felt I was entitled
Sure.
to a
Mhm.
better life.
Yeah.
And she didn't know the difference. And see, that's a problem with harsh segregation, the way that it was in the South. It suppresses people to the point where they don't even recognize the fact that they're being suppressed.
Right.
So,
Well, and it's
Yeah.
fascinating that you, as a young child, realized that you were being oppressed and realized you deserved better.
exactly. Yes. And the oppression is what drove me out of there. It really did. And I never looked back.
Yeah.
It was like, it, it really took me through my entire life, never wanting to go back to the South. So it drove me to the point where I had to be successful in business, and even with um, writing contracts with the city of LA, which we'll get into. Um, every time I secured a contract, I was worried about losing that contract, and I'd rush out and try to get another one. And I continued doing that for my entire life.
Keeping that
Mm,
hustle going. Okay, well, so it
absolutely.
wasn't an instant success for you. So you start out in LA with your mom, and I think I remember reading that you worked in the garment industry, or basically in a sweatshop sewing, and you're like, I can't do this either.
Yeah.
And that drove you to go to community college or night school.
Yes. Yes. Unfortunately, I was molested as a young child, 13 years old, and I started running with the wrong kids. My grades dropped. I found myself pregnant at 15. I had my baby at 16 for my teenage boyfriend, and uh, found myself working in a sewing factory with my mother. And the day I walked into that sewing factory was like the day I left New Orleans. Never again. I can't stay here. It was like every inch of my body, my soul screamed, "You have to get out. You have to get out." So I immediately enrolled in a junior college night classes. So I worked at the sweatshop um, for a couple of years and went to school at night. My mom helped me with my baby. She would pick her up. I didn't even have a car. I had to push my baby in a stroller down the street to the babysitter, get on a bus, go to the sweatshop, work for 8 hours, get on another bus, go to junior college, leave that school, and that at the night classes that I was taking, and get on another bus and go home. And I did that until I finally graduated. And fortunately for me, I took business courses, and because I wanted to be in business. Somehow I knew that. I didn't have the business sense at the time. I didn't have that image of myself owning my own company. I had a vision of being in a front office as a receptionist. That's what I wanted to be. So the first job I landed was working for an insurance company,
Hmm.
and the rest is history, as they say.
Absolutely. Well, one thing, Iris, that strikes me about you is that you always seem to have been guided by your gut. Like you just instinctively knew this is not right for me. Whereas I think some other people might feel that, but it was like, well, it's all I've got. I've got to keep plugging away with it. I've got to keep working at the sweatshop. What else am I going to do?
Right.
But you have always been guided by your internal instincts.
Yes. I call it my higher self.
Ah. Hmm.
I really believe that we all have a higher self, um, a being, a God, a he, she, whatever you want to call it. But it's beyond what you are, who you are. It's bigger than you, and you have to believe in that. And it's it helps to take away the fears. It gives you a drive, a determination to succeed, and I've always relied on that. And I would always say, there's no way that I could have done all that I've done by myself. I did, but I did have an internal drive that continues to this day. I'm not. I'm going to be 86 in 2 weeks, and I'm still going
You
strong.
are still
You
going
sure
strong.
are.
I think I read a quote from you. It's like, you can't quit. You just can't stop.
I can't stop. I really can't stop. I love driving myself. I love the competition,
Hmm.
especially competing with men.
And
Um,
you always beat the men.
I try. I
Yeah.
really do.
Well, and you clearly love the work. But one of the things, reading your story, Iris, one of the things I truly came to admire about you is that you have been such a supporter of people of color, and in fact, you insured people who were uninsurable after the Watts riots in Los Angeles, and you have taken chances on people in the Black community when
Yes,
nobody else would. And I
yes,
just think I'm so, number one, I'm so glad that you were willing to stick your neck out and do that, and glad that it worked, and that you proved, hey, these people and their businesses are worthy of our investment.
absolutely. Well, this happened shortly after the Watts riots. And when the National Guard came in, they set up boundaries, not just around Watts, but this area extended well beyond Watts and into very nice neighborhoods. And not that Watts is not, especially back then, it was a really nice neighborhood. And the homes that I insured were in those areas. But the point I'm making is that when the National Guard set up the boundaries, it created what they called redlining. So the people in those communities could not secure insurance, nor could they obtain loans. So I decided to open my own insurance agency. This was 10 years after I landed my first job as a receptionist. And so in 1967, I opened my own agency. Hartford Insurance Company was my first appointment. They knew what I was attempting to do, and they were willing to take a chance on me. Well, I proved to them too that I understood underwriting and rating, and I was
Sure.
capable of doing that.
And this was your first glass ceiling breakage, basically, that you were the first female Black-owned insurance company. Is it in the United States?
On the West Coast.
On the West Coast, yes. Okay. So that's one big glass ceiling broken.
Yes. Yes.
And you were really brave to take on clients that other companies weren't insuring. I mean, I just think about how young you were and how gutsy.
I know. I was still in my 20s, late 20s.
Gosh,
Wow.
it's crazy. It's so cool.
It was pretty ballsy of me, if I must say.
Yes.
But the need was there, and I've always been one to try to give back to my community and be a support and a bridge, and that's exactly what I was. I would go down to that area, Watts and beyond, and I had to take pictures of the houses. I started off with just homeowners insurance, personal lines as they refer to it as, auto insurance and homeowners insurance. And I would go take pictures of the home, write up the application, do the underwriting, drive down to Hartford and sit with the underwriter and convince them that it was a safe thing to do to insure this house. One by one, I did that until a couple of years later, I had a couple of thousand clients. And because they were all, if they were able to get insurance at all, they were paying 3 times the premium of the average person outside the area. So Hartford was very pleased with what I was doing, and I branched out from that into commercial insurance.
Wow. And then you also, because that wasn't enough already for you to do, you got into securities.
Yes. Okay, so I'll tell you about that. First of all, the commercial end of the business, when I decided to start insuring businesses, there were very few Black-owned, minority-owned businesses this was now in the late 60s and early 70s. Still not a lot of businesses to insure. And so I began to specialize in nonprofit agencies like the Urban League and NAACP and many Drew Medical School like that. And that really launched my commercial end of the business career. And from there, I went out on a bid on a limb to insure a major $50 million program that President Johnson, he was president at the time, it was a war on poverty program. And throughout the entire United States, cities and counties received grants from the federal government to improve the lives of minority people. And so I was awarded the contract. I wrote the insurance specifications for the program. And so I didn't have much competition.
That's one way to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, nobody wanted actually to write the insurance on Watts. And it covered East Los Angeles and Watts. And so I had very few people wanted to run down there to those suppressed areas. And so I was the one. I said, okay, I can do this. And so then I caught the eye of then Mayor Tom Bradley. And from there, I started writing insurance for the city of LA.
Yes, and that was a huge contract for you when you got that Los Angeles contract.
Yes, that was the largest contract awarded to any woman of any color. Um, and so from there, um, I started, actually, Mayor Bradley was beginning his affirmative action program, which assisted women and minorities in securing contracts with the city. So he asked me to get involved. Yes, so that was my giving back to the community. Yes, and so I assisted Mayor Bradley and city council people when we had several women, councilwomen, and minorities, both Hispanic and Black. Um, and I was able to um, prove to them that I could deliver on my contracts.
So what kind of stuff were you doing? Give us an example of the ways in which your work with Mayor Bradley helped to change things in Los Angeles and open doors for people.
Oh, good question. Well, the affirmative action program was one thing. When we started that program, you won't believe this, but we had a 5% goal for women and a 10% goal for minorities. And
Wow.
we couldn't meet that.
Oh, you couldn't?
No.
Oh,
The
man.
problem was small businesses doing business with the city, you have to obtain a performance bond. Now, getting a performance bond is like trying to get a loan. So if you don't have collateral, you can't secure or purchase a performance bond. So the mayor asked me to open a bond guarantee program. The city put up $10 million, and I hired a director for the program that had experience in running a bond guarantee program, hired him out of Oklahoma, and it was a highly successful program. So the $10 million I did not receive. Let me make that clear.
Mhm.
The city put this into an account that they managed themselves. It was their account. We operated off the interest from the account, which was used to put up the collateral that was necessary for the individual woman or minority contractors to secure performance bonds. So it was highly successful. I had the program for 8 years. And when I was getting ready to retire, I refused to bid on it any longer. I was actually not bidding on any contracts because I was trying to get out of LA. And so when I ended the contract, I returned the full $10 million. I love to say that because we didn't have one loss.
Really? That's
on the program
awesome.
for 30
Wow.
years. Mhm.
So I know you had so many successes, but did you ever hear from the people you were helping? Did they ever, did you ever get any feedback from the people who you helped to get insured and who you helped through these programs that you were running?
I did. I did periodically, especially after I opened the winery. Everybody was like, now they know where I am, right?
Yeah.
And so they would come to see me, surprise me at my front door of the winery. Here I am, and I'm successful. And it was so rewarding. It was just a wonderful feeling of accomplishment to know that I not only became successful myself, but I assisted other people. And as a matter of fact, my insurance agency is still running. I sold it to two individuals that worked for me.
Mhm.
Back in the day, I hired one girl. She was 17 when I hired her. So that was in the late 60s. And she and uh, a gentleman that was also in my office, they bought the agency from me, and it's still going strong.
Wow. What an
And they
accomplishment. That's
and they
awesome.
still have the clients that I started with. I mean, it's
Mm.
just wonderful
Love that.
for them. Yeah.
So it's amazing to me. We've talked, like I said, you're opening your winery in the San Ynez Valley isn't the beginning of your story. That was your retirement plan. And so the fact that I could talk to you for another couple of hours about your experiences in Los Angeles, um, and trying to be and becoming a successful businesswoman, being a change maker down there. I mean, we could go on and on that. But on the other hand, you have this whole other chapter where you decide to retire, but in true Irish style, you don't really slow down a bit and you open a winery.
Right, right.
Yes, yes.
And I think, Iris, you even say that the winery is the best chapter of your life.
Oh, it certainly was. It absolutely was, and still is. It's still a part of my life. Once I sold my home in the winery, I just moved down the street from the winery, so
Oh, you couldn't go very far away.
I couldn't go far. No, I go at least once or twice a week. People will call me and ask me to meet them there, old guests and friends and Cellar Club members. And I get in my car and take my dogs with me. I've got two beautiful little Havanese, and the little one grew up there. But anyway, so yeah, it's still very much a part of my life. When I decided to leave the city, by the way, I failed to mention that I did open a second company, a securities firm,
Right.
specializing in pension planning. So that's really, I had that for another, I guess, 18 years, providing deferred compensation um, investments to the city of Los Angeles employees.
Okay, Iris, do you ever sleep?
It's really hard. It's interesting that you asked that question because it's still very hard for me to sleep. I fall off to sleep immediately because I'm exhausted, right? And 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking up. And so what do you think I do when I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning?
You start working.
No, actually, I
Do
try
you
to stay in
meditate?
bed just so
Ah.
I'll meditate, or I will turn on an Audible book.
Okay.
I love
Nice.
doing that.
I do
Yeah.
too.
And I love Audible books. It really helps you get through a lot of books fast.
Mhm.
It does.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Okay, so
I
tell us about the wine chapter, though. How
Yeah.
did that
Oh,
come
okay.
about?
All right.
So,
Okay.
but first I want to
Okay.
make a comment.
Mhm.
Iris, you actually started drinking at age 7, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And my grandmother, same grandmother, she was half Italian. So her father used to make, you know, red wine. We had another name for it, but I won't use it. But it was
Oh.
just table wine.
Okay.
But on Sunday, she cooked for the entire family, big dinner, and always a pitcher of red wine on the table. And the kids got a little glass, a little demi-tasse glass, and um, uh, they probably watered it down, but nevertheless, that's where I learned to pair wine with food, if you will.
Nice.
So when
Nice.
I opened my winery, that was the only thing I knew to do. I um, I um, I added a kitchen on the back of the house. It was I bought the property. Skipping around a little bit. If I'm going too fast, let me know. But I I bought a property adjacent to my home property, 22 acres.
Okay, so you bought this property that had a 2-story adobe building, which is rare, and that had been abandoned for 10 years, right?
Correct. It had been abandoned for 10 years, and it was 22 acres adjacent to my home property. And I just fell in love with it. I drove past it for probably 3 years and finally decided to stop and look at it because nobody wanted it. And it was so run down. So God was in my ear at that time saying to me, stop and look at this property. And so I did. And when I walked in the house, I went, "Oh my God, I've got to keep this. I have to own it."
Hmm.
And so I purchased it and started a restoration program that took me 2 years to restore it. And what saved it was the fact that it has a pitch roof, because it was built by two Englishmen, and a raised foundation. So it saved the adobe bricks. And it's also a Santa Barbara County historical landmark.
Nice.
With that, I went, of course, this has got to be my winery. So as I got into the restoration of the adobe, I could just see it being my tasting room. So with that, 2 years later, I opened my doors. I planted the vineyards, both upper and lower vineyards, and built the winery.
Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about the two varietals you planted because they are near and dear to your heart, and they are also the varietals of the two wines you sent to me and Mary to taste.
Oh, yes, I forgot.
Ah,
Which were delicious.
Oh,
so
Thank you very
good.
much. Love
thank
them.
you. Didn't you? I just love both of those. Those are my favorite.
Yes.
But I planted 5 different varietals on the property. The Viognier, which is one that I sent to you, that's our state Viognier. It just receives awards every single year.
And
And I
Were,
love Viognier.
What
were
do
you
you
the
love
first to
about?
plant Viognier in San Ynez Valley? Did I read that also?
No, actually, I believe Andrew Murray was the first one.
Okay.
But
Yes.
we were the only two at the time,
Mm,
totally grown varietals. And my
nice.
vines came from Beaucastel, France. So having the vines come from the south of France, really, they say that it starts in the vineyard. You know, you can't make good wine with bad grapes.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
this
go ahead.
Viognier is gorgeous. It has all that honeysuckle and peach and apricot nectarine fruit.
Oh,
It's
yes, absolutely. It's
but
all
it has
tropical.
but it also has great acid.
It does. It's very well balanced.
Exactly. It's very well balanced. It has enough acid to handle the fruit because it's very fruit forward.
Hmm. And
Um,
it's also very perfumey.
yes, yes. I just love it. It's like you said, it's honeysuckle, pineapple, peach, all of those wonderful tropical flavors, which I
So
love.
so you open your winery and there's a line waiting to get in.
Yes, I love that story where people had been watching the remodel of the
Yes.
Adobe, so they were really fired up about this new winery.
Well,
Also genius. That was a genius marketing move.
wasn't that great? I mean, it really was. I was like, okay, so they know I'm doing all this work, right? Well, the best part is practically the whole valley had at one point in time walked through that old adobe looking at it. Several of them wanted to purchase it. They came back and told me they wanted it, but they didn't want to take on such a major project.
Mm.
And so anyway, it just needed to be a vineyard. It needed to be a winery. And yes, they because they were so anxious to see what was going on, by the time I opened my doors, there was just a line of people that just came flooding in, and they continued to come. And they would tell their friends about it, their friends would come. And as I mentioned to you when I was restoring it, I added a beautiful country kitchen on the back because I love to cook Creole food, of course. And every Saturday, I would make a Creole dish, gumbo or jambalaya or red beans and rice, crawfish etouffee, something.
Mm.
And I would grab a bottle of wine from the front bar and bring it to the kitchen and feature it with that particular dish. So I was pairing the wine with the food, just like I did as a child at 7 years old.
Yeah,
Amazing.
nice callback. Um,
Yeah.
Well, and I love that you brought
absolutely.
some of your Creole soul and spirit to the San Ynez Valley, which was probably, I don't know that anyone had really done Creole food in the San Ynez Valley before.
No, no, they didn't. As a matter of fact, it was really very refreshing to the valley. They loved the idea, the concept of having something unique. And my friends actually supported me. They sent people to the winery because it was different. I had jazz playing throughout the house. I would hang Mardi Gras beads on the guests as they left.
Nice.
So
Well, that,
that was like my business card, you know? It was
yeah.
like, and so they'd go out on the wine trail, and the people on the wine trail would say, "Where'd you get the beads from?" And then they would come over, and it just continued to evolve
Yeah.
like that.
And in your book, you say, well, people would stay, they would come and they would just stay, and everybody from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different, you know, people of color,
Yes.
all of that. But you've also said that, and what we want our listeners to know you were the first African American woman to own a winery in the United States. And you've said, I'm the first Black winery owner, but I don't want to be the last. So tell us about
Love
that.
Absolutely. Well, since then, well, first of all, let me just say quickly that my winery was always mixed, as you mentioned. And I love the fact that I would see people, white people, Black people, Mexican people, Indian people, crossing over my tasting room floor to meet someone that they hadn't known, to introduce themselves, and they'd have a conversation. And this is what I want to say about racism in America. It's highly important for us to get to know each other. It's all about establishing a relationship, talking to each other, getting to know. I would hear people say, they cross the room and say, by the way, where are you from? And they invariably find something in common. Oh, I went to this high school or this college or something, or I lived in that neighborhood back in the day, and so that's all we need. We
It's
just
so
need
true.
to know that we're all the same.
There's so much more that unites us than divides us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
so
And
true.
how do we solve it if we don't know where it started?
Right.
If we deny the fact that we have the problem, we can't ever resolve it.
Right.
Absolutely.
So also, you offered your space for a couple years to the local Chumash Indian tribe to make their wine, and Tara, the winemaker, was one of your first custom crush clients. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. And now she has her own label.
I know, Cayman's Two Dreams.
Yes. Isn't that wonderful?
I know. We have to get her on the pod, Mary.
Oh, you absolutely do. As a matter of fact, talking about that, Cassandra Wilson started a PBS show featuring people of color in the wine business, and Tara starts it off. And the first one is going to be September. Oh, come on, Iris.
On PBS in September, though, this September.
Yes.
And-
but I have to get this date for you because
I think you're featured in this thing too, aren't you?
yes, I close out the series. Which is
Woohoo!
kind of cool.
Nice.
Very nice. Yes.
That's really fun.
So I'm really excited about it.
I will post a link to that in our show notes you can find on our website.
Yes, it's September the 15th, the first one on TBS. And so Tara will be the first one, she and her wife. And I think that, and she's also a winemaker. And they're doing beautiful, beautiful wines. I'm so proud of her. And she started at my winery.
That's
cool.
awesome.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
So when you started your winery, you also had a string of winemakers, but your opening winemaker was Rick Longoria, a legend in Santa Barbara wine country.
Yes, I was very, very fortunate to be able to have Rick kick off my winery for me because he is an accomplished winemaker. At the time, he had been at Guinea for 12 years. And he had started making his own label. He needed a place to make his own wines, and I needed a winemaker. And we were introduced, and eventually I said yes. It took me a while because I didn't really know what I was looking for in the way of a winemaker. I didn't know anything about the wine business other than running businesses successfully. So Rick came along, and he and his wife became very good friends. And when we finally decided to make it happen, I made a gumbo at my house, and he brought over a bottle of Blues Cuvée with a black guy looking like B.B. King with a guitar on the label. And it was a perfect pairing.
Oh, absolutely.
So with that, we said, okay, this has got to be the right thing to do. And so he was very instrumental in selecting the grape varietals. I always give him credit for that because he certainly knew a lot more than I did about the wine business. So Yes, I did. I had since Rick, I had three other winemakers, all of which were males, and I have nothing bad to say about winemakers, male winemakers. I love them. I love men. But I wanted a woman.
Mhm.
I wanted a woman winemaker. I wanted to give, again, a woman the opportunity to be the winemaker. And so I finally hired um, a woman in 2014, and she's still there to this day. Her name is St. John, Adrienne St. John.
Tell us about her.
Well, oh, that's another interesting story. Back in the day, um, women were really not recognized as winemakers. They were actually called lab girls because they had the chemistry background and they worked in the labs because you have to have chemistry
Right.
in winemaking. And so they were referred to as lab girls. And to me, it was so insulting.
I agree, because I have a chemistry degree. I know what it takes to get that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a determination, a drive, a skill, uh, hours and hours of in classroom.
Mm.
I mean, working hard to get that type of degree. And so Adrienne came with that. And the first words out of her mouth was, I want to make the wines that you like. And I thought, okay, I'm hiring this.
You're hired.
Yeah. And she did. And I would always say, it's not about my palate, it's about my client's palate. They're coming to taste the wines and enjoy the wines that they enjoy, not what the winemaker wants to make.
Yes, right.
So that I was always insisting on that. And I found that in Adrienne.
Iris, I'm curious, you started the winery in 1997.
Yes.
How has the wine industry changed? We were talking about, some of the firsts and you being the first African American owner of a winery in the US, wanting to hire a female winemaker. So what has changed since 97 and what obstacles do people of color, do women still face in the industry from your perspective?
Well, I'll address women first. What we're finding that like Ellen Hancock College is one of the major universities here that has a viniculture program. And most of the people that are graduating from that course are women.
Really?
Yes.
Hey, that's terrific.
Yes. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
So we're going to have more women winemakers than men. And actually, they'll probably want to slap me for saying this, but we have a better palate than men.
I agree.
We do. And I think it comes from cooking.
Yeah.
Of years, I'm talking, centuries of cooking, because that's what we did, right?
And I also believe women have a better sense of smell, and that is so integral in wine.
Absolutely. My mother used to
point.
always complain about my nose because I was always complaining about odors and smells and like that. And I found that I had a nose and a palate for tasting wines and knowing what it needed, what next to blend with it,
Yes.
And I love that part of the business, just blending the wines with the winemaker. I don't make the wines, but my winemaker did. And she would come over with cases of wines, samples from the winery that were taken from the barrels or from the stainless steel tanks. And we would sit and blend for hours just prior to bottling. So that was wonderful.
So yes, okay, so more women are getting into wine and being embraced by the industry and welcomed now. What about people of color?
Well, I'm surprised myself to see how many people we have all over the country. I attended a conference by the Hugh Society last year.
Oh, nice.
And hundreds of Black people, Hispanic people, women were there, winemakers, sommeliers, winery owners, all anxious to put their mark on the industry. And it's just wonderful to see across the nation. We're
Yeah.
seeing Black people, women, people of all colors, um, like Tara.
Yes.
And so it makes me feel very, very proud. And because I am now recognized as their trailblazer,
Hmm.
I do have a certain responsibility to support them, and whatever I can do, I'm going to do.
I love
Right?
that.
Because before you, that, people of color didn't see people who look like them in the wine industry.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I would always say when a white person would come to my winery and see Black people in my tasting room, if they didn't like the idea, they didn't come back. And that was perfectly fine with me.
I was just saying you didn't mind a bit.
That's,
No, not
but
at all. Because it was people that were willing to be together, wanting to be together,
right.
And
Yeah.
so it made my winery work. It was probably one of the top five wineries in at the time, to be recognized as the winery to go to, a must go to winery.
Nice.
Hmm.
Well, so the Viognier we tasted was made by Adrian because it's a
Yes.
2018, but you also sent us a 2014 Syrah, which is mind-blowingly amazing. And you were involved in this
Yes,
wine.
yes. That was my last label that I was involved in making.
We should
And
tell folks that you sold the winery
Yes, in 2016.
oh
for our
yeah,
listeners.
yes. And they bought the winery because they love the wines. And they kept the winemaker and the style of the wines. As a matter of fact, um, uh, Martin Gauthier and his wife bought the winery. Young family, loved them. They were perfect for the winery because they didn't want to change the name. The Cajuns came from Canada, so they are French Canadians. And so we have a history going back to, as Cajuns, going back to Canada. And so there's a river in Canada called the Rideau River. And so that also was like something that was a sign for both of us that
Oh,
this was
nice.
going to work.
Yes.
So they kept the name, they kept the winemaker, and they actually just bought a 50-acre property in the valley here, and they're planting all Rhone varietals on that property as well.
Oh, love that.
They kept your love of Rhone as well.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
now they're going to be making a Chateau du Plancher cuvée that will be a state-driven wine.
Fantastic. So they will
So
keep
happy
your
with that.
legacy going into the
Yes,
future.
yes, because that, of course, as you know, is my maiden name, my family name.
Right.
And so they're keeping that particular blend.
So let's talk about this Syrah because it's I know you are a big fan of Chateauneuf du Pape.
Yes, yes. That was the first one. That was actually, I tasted a 1989 Chateauneuf du Pape way before I started, well before I started the winery. And so what I was doing, because I had to commute back and forth from the valley to Los Angeles, when I was in the valley on weekends, because I was still running my two companies in the city, I would go wine tasting. What else do you do in the valley but wine taste? And so I tasted a Chateau de Pape and I went, oh my God, what is this? And so I fell in love with it and I went, this is what I want to plant. And it turns out that my particular property was the perfect microclimate for Rhone varietals.
Wow.
And so I planted 5 acres of the estate Syrah that I sent you up on top of the hill. That was all Syrah. And in the lower valley there, I planted Viognier in the front of the property, 6 acres of it because I had to have a lot of it. And Grenache, Mourvedre, and Roussanne. And my Roussan, by the way, won Best White Wine in Wines of the World in 2004.
I know, I read that. That's impressive. And I love Roussan. So this Syrah is very classic to me. It's a 2014. It, there's really not a lot of age on it. It's holding up so well. And it's got that earthy, mushroomy,
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Peppery,
peppery. Oh, definitely. Absolutely. And it just
Mm.
fills your mouth with a burst of blackberry
Mhm.
fruit. And it's just gorgeous.
Thank you. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I love. I love a big red wine that fills your mouth, hits the top of your roof of your palate, and just explodes. And
Yeah.
then finishes with soft tannins. I don't like harsh tannins.
Right.
I think that's the lovely surprise of it. It's got those big vibrant flavors, and yet there's not a cutting edge to it. It's got a soft touch and a soft
Yes.
finish.
Yes.
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 Love
Great.
it.
I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
much, and thank you for sending them to us.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, I am dying to know what is next for you. You're going to be 86 years young,
Yes.
and you've got you released your memoir on Juneteenth, which I thought was really special, also, and significant. And so you're promoting the book. You've got the PBS special thing coming up in September, and are you already planning the next chapter, or are you just going to ride with this one for a little bit?
Well, I'm planning the next chapter, of course.
Of course you are, because you can't stop.
I can't stop. I really, really can't. But I am on a book tour right now doing book signings, which is a lot of fun. And I'm kind of all the wineries in the valley are saying yes to me for book signing, which is really sweet.
Nice.
Very nice.
Well,
It
that speaks
really is.
volumes about the kind of colleague you've been in the wine world and the kind of friend you've been to other vintners. So good for you.
They're all my friends, the entire valley. I can't go anywhere in the valley. Just yesterday, we were having brunch and twice somebody came up and said hi to me. So it's wonderful. I love my life. And so I'm going to Napa in 2 weeks. Actually, I'm going for my birthday, September 16th. And Theophilus Vineyards.
Oh, yes.
Black-owned winery, woman winery. She's an attorney. I'm very proud of her. She's doing beautiful wines. I'm glad to hear somebody say yes.
I have been a fan of Theodora's for many years. And again, Mary B, she's another person I want to try to get on the pod.
Let's do it.
Yes, you should. You absolutely should. She's amazing. So she's having a harvest party, and she's invited me to come and do book signings up there. I'm going with a girlfriend of mine, and we're going to have we've been trying to plan something to a girls' weekend, and so we said, let's do it. So we're going to do that. And then the next thing I want to do is I want a made-for-TV movie.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Of course. Your story is amazing.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, this is going to happen. I know it will.
Yes, let's put it out there. So anybody listening who wants to produce this,
well, you know what?
As a matter
of fact, this is another story that's absolutely God sent. I got a call from a woman. Her name is Marcia Maria McKenna, and she said, we became friends on Instagram. She said, I think we're related, and I sent her something. She said, I'm from New Orleans, and I think my father's your cousin. And so I sent her a message back, and I said, what was your mother's name, and what is your father's last name? And she said, Joycelyn is my mother, and Dixon McKenna is my father. Now, he's my first cousin. I write about him in the book.
No way, really?
But the most amazing thing is she just received an Emmy for a short story that she did called The Arc of South Central.
Okay. I think we've got our...
I've got my rundown already.
Yes.
I know.
So we're
Iris.
establishing a wonderful relationship.
So awesome.
My auntie is her grandmother. I mean, it's unbelievable. We talk about family like, it was yesterday. So anyway,
You know, Iris, when you put good stuff out into the universe, good stuff comes back to you. And so
Yes.
to me, you are an example of that. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your story and inspiring us with your fearlessness, your hardworking spirit. And you said earlier in the podcast, as we got started, I love this message. You said, stay open to life. Be willing to take risks and let your adversities lift you up, not drag you down. And I really think, we should all just let those words kind of sit with us as we go through the day today.
That's an excellent closing. Yes.
And just
that's what took me to all the different places that I found myself and finding success in each and every one of them and finally living the life that I've always wanted to live, and it's wonderful.
You are a wonder.
That is such an inspiration, Iris. And, you know, we just can't wait. We will be watching. We can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Thank you to both Marys. It's been a delight. Absolutely. An experience that I'll always remember.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Iris. Likewise.
I love women doing things like you're doing.
Well, thank you. And cheers to you and Sip Sip Hooray, Iris.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, that's going to do it for our show today. What an incredible conversation with Iris Rideau, a true trailblazer and inspiration. And we wanted to let you, our listeners, know that her book, her memoir, is available now. It is called From White to Black, One Life Between Two Worlds.
Right. And I will post all of this in our show notes on sipsiphoooraypodcast.com. And please, if you like what you've heard, if you like our podcast, whatever platform you're listening on, please go in and give us a rating, give us a review. It helps other people find Sip Sip Hooray to listen to. And we'd really appreciate the support. And you can follow us on social media. We are Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and Sip Sip Hooray, the number 1 on Twitter.
Okay, Mary Orlin. Well, that was the kind of podcast where I want to go out there and change the world. So
me too. So let's raise a glass to that. Sip, sip, hooray.
Sip, sip, hooray.